Being a musician is an incredible job, but it comes with struggles which rarely gets talked about. Number 1, inconsistent income even when you're successful. People assume when you work with big artists, the money becomes stable, but it doesn't. Income as a musician is all peaks and troughs. I've had super busy summers where I'm out gigging every weekend, and then December, January, February is just absolutely dead. I've even had 3-month tours cancelled about 3 days before it was supposed to start, which is brutal. Sometimes you're able to claim a bit of that money back depending whether the artist and the band is insured, but to be honest, most of the time I just got cancelled and I got nothing from it. That is never an easy thing to take when that happens. Music industry is crazy like that. There's never any security. How I deal with inconsistent income is I save up for the quieter months. I try to resist spending too much when I'm busy. Pretty consistently every year, December to February, there is very little work and you're living off the money that you earned from the earlier part of the year. During the quieter months, I find other stuff to work on, often music related. I do a lot of songwriting and production sessions with other artists. I also work on my own artist projects and put out music. Another great thing to do during these quieter months is to practice and to get better at what you do. Number 2, saying yes to everything and burning out. In my previous video, I mentioned one great way to get gigs is to say yes and then figure it out. Well, this is a bit of a blessing and a curse because there has been times in the past where I've bitten off more than I can chew. There will be times in the past where I'll be working with different artists every day for weeks. So every day I'll be learning new sets, programming new sounds, getting 3-4 hours sleep a night, waking up, rehearsing the set, then turning up to the new session. The artists and producers that I work with could probably sense that I was stressed and burnt out. In hindsight, it probably did more damage than good, me taking so much on. I probably had a bit of a fear to saying no to work at the time because I didn't want to lose out to opportunities. Quite often, opportunities lead to more opportunities. And I end up taking underpaid gigs and also gigs that weren't right for me, that I didn't necessarily enjoy the projects very much. How I learned to deal with it is I finally learned to say no. I learned that when you say no, people will still respect you. I used to think that when you turn down work, you've lost the gig forever. Quite often, for example, when the gig doesn't pay the fee that I want, I'll happily recommend someone else. That doesn't mean that they don't want to work with you anymore. Maybe they just can't afford you then, but they'll still always want you. It's like having an All Saints t-shirt, for example, or a H&M t-shirt. You can maybe just afford the H&M t-shirt there and then, but you always want the All Saints t-shirt. And I started practicing saying no to projects, for example, that weren't paying the fee that I set myself. And it's amazing that maybe they couldn't afford me there and then, but a month later, they'll come back and be like, we'll make it work with you. Also, another great mindset that I use to stop myself saying yes to everything is the rule of the 3 M's: mates, money, and music. So mates, do you get along with the people in the project? Money is the money that you're getting paid worth your time. And music, is the music something you enjoy? For me to work on a project, it's got to tick 2 of those M's. It could be any of those M's, but as long as it ticks 2, then I'm all for it. Number 3, comparison and imposter syndrome. Even after 20 years, sometimes I still feel like I don't belong in the room. Walking into a room with elite musicians or players could instantly trigger imposter syndrome, and especially if you've been scrolling through their social media beforehand. Social media really distorts reality, and you really can't help but compare yourself to other musicians that does something similar to you. How I deal with imposter syndrome is I remind myself that I am asked to be there, and I focus on adding value beyond just playing notes. For example, I offer to play multiple instruments, or I put myself forward for backing vocals, even go around just helping everyone carry their gear or packing up and packing down, making tea and coffee for everyone, and generally just bringing positive vibes to the room and keeping everyone smiling and lifting the whole room up. Number 4, being away from home. One of the hardest part of being on tour isn't necessarily the playing, but it's actually what you miss at home. For years, I couldn't hold down a relationship. It's a lot to ask of someone to keep waiting around for you when you're away for months and months on end. In the past, I found it very hard to stay in touch with friends. Being on tour is like being in a time capsule. Your life freezes when you're on tour. When I come back from tour, I kind of pick up where I left off, but all my friends have moved on and they found other friends, and maybe they got married and had kids. I've lost some friends in the past because they just thought, oh, Nick, he's just gone off and do his music thing, touring the world, and he doesn't think of us anymore. But that cannot be further from the truth. I would feel exhausted when I get home, and it does take time to get back in the routine of home and that stability of home. When you're on tour, you've kind of got everything looked after for you. You've got your breakfast, lunch and dinner scheduled. You've got everything planned in your day. At home, you've got to organise all your own schedule. And that's quite a mindset shift, especially when you've been away for a long time. I became a dad a couple of years ago, and I never expected how much that would shake up my world. For the first time in my life, I get really homesick. I feel really guilty that when I'm away from home, my wife has to single parent. I feel guilty that I'm not there for my daughter. I feel like I'm missing out on some of the formative years of her life. It's something that I'm still learning to manage, but I've realised so many musicians go through the same thing, and I talk to them about it, and I find comfort in doing that. Also, to help deal with being away from home is I do lots of phone calls with friends. Even just a small, short phone call could really remind your friends that you think of them and how important they are to you. I FaceTime my family every morning, especially with my daughter. FaceTime's such a beautiful thing that they can see your face every morning. So when you come home, I'm not alien to her. When I am home, I do my best to do as much as I can to help my wife out, and I try and be a super dad to my daughter and take her out as much as I can and to make up for all that lost time. I've also started to shift a lot of my work into studio work now, so I rely less on touring for income. My number 5 struggle is loving music but turning it into a job. Music is my life. I love it so much, and it's what gets me out of bed every day. But at some point, music stops becoming therapy and it starts becoming a bit of a deadline. I never got into music for money, but life happens and responsibilities grow. I have a mortgage, I have a kid, I have nursery fees to pay, and money becomes more important. I definitely feel the pressure now to be constantly working, constantly creating, and taking jobs on that sometimes aren't my cup of tea, but I need to do it because I need to pay the bills. How I deal with this is I have my own passion projects where I get to release my creativity. I have my solo project Amber Lake. I have a band called Year of the Lion, and also have ambient music called We Are Now. I can link them up there, so if you're interested, check them out. Having my own projects helps me still feel musically fulfilled and keeps me excited with creating music. Thank you so much for watching. If you're a musician watching this, I would genuinely love to know which one of my points do you relate to the most. Drop a comment below. You're definitely not the only one.